It's no wonder that they have $20,000 in credit card debt. They can't make progress on the car. They're upside down on it. Like, this whole situation progressively gets worse if their income stays where it's at.
You can't continue down this path because it will be ruined financially if you continue to do what you're doing for the next 30 years.
At a certain point, you gotta understand, like, I am not making good financial decisions, and all of this is being run through my emotions.
It's your stupid tax that you're paying, right? And then you don't have to deal with this anymore. Then you can take your extra money, and start putting it in the stock market and do what you wanted to do all along.
Welcome back to the show. Lauren and I are back for our weekly episode where we talk all things money. Now, Lauren, I was talking to someone recently and, they were explaining their financial situation to me. And I was like, hey, man, I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like, it's a really rough situation. Do you mind if I ask, though, like, what do you feel like is kind of like your plan to get out of here? Like, how do you see yourself making progress? And you could kind of just tell by the way that they were explaining the situation that they just felt crushed by it, and it got to a point where when I kind of like asked them a little bit more about what they feel like they need to do to get out of here, that it just seemed like they thought their best option was to just kind of ignore it until they couldn't ignore it. At least for right now, that would kind of give them some peace of mind. And I feel like that we've come across that kind of feeling or behavior or mindset on the show so many times where people, like, I feel like they don't know how to create a plan to get out of it. And they also know that what would need to happen is a lot of change to like who they are or how they live their life or whatever. And so they see those two big obstacles and they're like, ignoring it just becomes way more attractive. Why do you feel like people kind of get stuck in that place?
I think you just kind of said it, the actions and the behavior change that would have to take place would be so drastic that they know it's going to be super hard. You know what I mean? I think that's why humans in general have such a hard time with change, because we have to literally change how we're living our entire lifestyle, whether it's your money or, your diet or exercise, anything in life, a new habit you want to create. Like for me, I've always said, like, I want to get up in the morning and go for a walk. And do I do it? Not always. Sometimes I do, but it's not an everyday thing because it's so hard to make that first step out the door. Once you're out there and going, it's fine, but it's actually like that change in your behavior that is so hard to get going. So it makes complete sense. And of course, there's so many negative feelings that go along with it as well. So like, why would you want to bring all that up when you can just push it off to the side and you'll come to it later,
Yeah, and you were saying that, and it was making me think of this. I don't know if this was like a real story or if someone was just making like an analogy or something, but they were saying that the way that their trainer got them to be consistent with the gym is that for like 30 days straight, they showed up to the gym, went into the locker room, got changed, put their shoes on, and then went home. And that was the habit that they built for 30 days straight. It was super low barrier to entry, like low effort, like you just have to show up.
Yeah.
And over time, they started to build up the amount of time that they spent at the gym. But the first thing that they had to build was that habit of just showing up. And I feel like not enough people do that when it comes to their finances. Like it gets to a point where they're like, you know what, I'd rather just ignore it. And it's like, you just got to show up, just become aware of the situation. Just start paying attention to it. Even if that doesn't lead to change right away, I feel like with enough attention over time, you start to see, and even if that comes out of a place of feeling guilty about your finances or feeling like you're ashamed about it or feeling, whatever type of emotions you need to feel about it, just showing up, just seeing it, just having visibility of what's going on. Like, I feel like that's going to be the catalyst to make you want to actually change.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time. Like when people say like, what's the first thing I can do with my money? It's like, where's your money going? Just watch where it goes. Don't change a thing. Just watch where your money's going and pay attention to it in that way. And you're right. Just having that visibility, it honestly is like the first step there to even wanting to be able to make changes like that. But yeah, it's super hard and I get it. But I mean, and there's things that I want to do and I want to change and I want to be more accountable with. But, I think, getting in a good routine, like you said, creating those habits, even if it's a small start, would be probably the best bet there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the perfect segue. Why don't we jump into today's episode where we're talking about people who feel like they've destroyed their finances and how we think that they can actually start to get out of this. So why don't we jump into the first one? I'm 30 and have financially ruined myself. I owe over $50,000 in student loan debt for a degree I cannot use. I have my BSN, but a pinched nerve has rendered me more immobile than my weight ever has. To make matters worse, I owe about $20,000 in credit card debt and $27,000 on a car that I'm upside down on. In total, I'm paying nearly $1,500 towards the student loans, credit cards, and car, leaving me with very little after my other expenses are paid. I work full-time and make about $60,000 a year. I'm looking for a second job, but the market feels terrible right now. I seriously need help.
So this person is saying that they have a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, is my guess. And okay, they're only making $60,000 a year. I feel like I used to be in healthcare, Nick, for like 5 minutes out of college. I worked at a psychiatric facility, and there were nurses who actually worked remotely for the insurance companies. Yeah, for the insurance companies to do like the authorization for the patient and things like that. So I feel like I wonder if this person has even explored something like that because they have a pinched nerve. They probably can't make real good nursing money because they're not working the long hours or they're not working in the traditional, maybe like ER type setting or whatever. I'm not sure what they're doing, but $60K a year, even in like a small town, feels like not that much for especially a nurse with a bachelor's degree these days. So I feel like their first option in all of this, I don't understand why they can't use their BSN because there's other ways to be a nurse than just, working in an ER or something like that. So I think the first thing they need to do is explore a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, to spend, who knows how much they actually spent, but to have $50,000 of debt because of this degree, and they almost make it sound like they're not able to use that degree and they're working some other job for $60K a year. I don't really know, but if that's the case, $50,000 kind of just wasted, and now you just have to pay it back, and it's with interest and everything, you're probably paying back $75,000 to have that degree, which has such a high earning potential if you're willing to put in the work. It just seems like such a waste for it to just sit off to the side.
Yeah, that's why probably the first thing I'm going to do out of all of this is, and then maybe she's not licensed. That could be a thing. Maybe that's why she's not using it. Maybe she didn't really finish it to its full potential. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not really sure how the nursing world works. I do know you have to be licensed though. So my biggest thing is if that's a possibility, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to try to find like a remote type of nursing position because I think you can make more than $60,000 a year doing that. And then it solves a lot of the other problems that she was talking about, like the $20K in credit card debt and the $27K on a car that she's upside down on. Because if you can obviously increase income, then you're not going to need to put money on, credit cards to live, and you can start working your way out of that debt.
Yeah, I mean, this person didn't say where they live, but I'd imagine off that $60K a year, like they're maybe bringing home like $3,500 a month. And if, $1,500 is going towards just servicing the debt, like you're left with like $2,000, maybe $2,500 a month to get through all the rest of your expenses. Like it's no wonder that they have $20,000 in credit card debt. They can't make progress on the car. They're upside down on it. Like this whole situation gets progressively gets worse if their income stays where it's at. Like they really got to, like you said, use that degree to increase how much they're able to earn. Then like these other issues don't they don't have as much weight to them, because if you can make $1,500, that's a lot of money to go towards debt. But if you can make that a smaller and smaller percentage of your world on a monthly basis, like your situation is going to feel some relief for sure.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how they're going to get a second job if they're already having trouble with like their nursing job because they can't, it doesn't seem like they can be mobile enough to do that type of work like that. I feel like second jobs that people get are usually like the Ubers. I mean, I guess you could Uber if you want to because you're just sitting in a car. But, doing the Door Dashes and stuff, like running in and out of the restaurants or running in and out of like the grocery stores, something like that's going to be kind of hard to do, right? So I don't know. Personally, I'm going to try to maybe get like at least $80,000 a year working my nursing degree. And then try to figure out all the above. But I don't know if the second job is actually going to help anything at this point. I mean, if they want to, great. But I just don't know if that's their best option at this point. I'm going to try to go back and figure out something with that nursing degree because I feel like there is a way that they can use it. Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm being a little insensitive here. The pinched nerve to me for why you can't use your nursing degree is like, I don't know. Like if a pinched nerve is not like one of the worst things, that to make you immobile. Like I feel like you spend the money, go see a good chiropractor, go see a physical therapist, have someone who's going to help you get through this. That's probably, I mean, honestly, that could be the quickest fix towards being back on your feet, being able to move around, and then being able to use that degree. Like I don't know. I've trained for a long time. I've had like injuries here and there. A pinched nerve is just not at the top of the list where I'm like, yeah, you're right. You can't move. Like obviously while you're going through it, it's not fun, but like the finding a resolution for that, like I feel like that's going to be their best bet towards actually starting to make progress with their finances. As weird as that might seem, like they got to be able to use that degree to its full potential. That's where I think their highest their highest earning like potential is going to be at, is if they can use that degree.
Yeah, for sure. And I've never had a pinched nerve, so I'm not really sure like what it feels like. I'm sure it's not a great feeling in the world, but she also says something about more than her weight ever has. So it's probably like a pinched nerve in combination, like with weight issues, I'm guessing. Yeah, probably what's going on there. But at any rate, so, we've both talked about, how to increase the income there, maybe use that bachelor's of science in nursing, because that's a crazy good bachelor's degree to not be using, especially when there's so many different remote opportunities out there. And then after that, after you get your income up, whether it's through, even a part-time job doing some type of nursing, maybe it's not a job that needs like a licensed nurse to do it, but you have the skill set to do that. So maybe that's something that you could consider too. But after that, then we talk about building up the emergency fund and then start working on, those debts, because unfortunately, if you have an upside down car, it's probably not going to be in your best interest to probably sell it. If she had a $27,000 car and she wasn't upside down on it, now we don't know all the issues or all the details here, but that might be something that she could consider, getting rid of and getting something cheaper, because that's quite a bit on only making $60,000 a year. But I think there's ways to pay this off, especially when, she goes up in income, whether that's through a full-time job or a part-time job that she gets.
100%. Yeah, I think definitely focus on the credit cards first. That's probably the worst of all the debts. $20,000 is not an absurd amount. It's a lot of money, but like, if you can get this income up, you can make some real progress on that. But yeah, with the car, like it depends what you could sell it for today. If you could sell it for a few $1,000s less, like can you take out a loan to cover the gap there, and then you're just working towards paying off like a $3,000 or $4,000 loan, versus if this car is worth half that amount, like at that point you might as well just keep it, take really good care of it, and try to run that thing into the ground well beyond the time that you can actually pay it off. From there, like the student loans, I imagine is going to be something that they're going to have to just pay off over time.
Yeah, for sure. And I would assume they're going to need a car if they are going to work. Again, I don't know what type of job they're doing, but probably the best bet to just keep that there too. But not using their credit cards, not going further into debt, obviously is going to be the move. But this is really tight right now. So I know that their situation is hard, but I feel like there is some moves to make. I don't know if this person has tried this, but I think we've laid out some pretty clear examples of how to move forward with this, and that your life is not financially ruined at 30. You just have to change some things and move in a different direction. You can't continue down this path, because it will be ruined financially if you continue to do what you're doing for the next 30 years,
100%.
All right, let's move into another episode, or another scenario we have here. This one says, investing in real estate feels like the worst mistake I've ever made. I own 2 rental properties, and a tenant recently defaulted on the only one that made any profit. Now we must evict him. My other rental barely breaks even on the mortgage, but with repairs and other expenses, I'm coming in at a loss. I regret not just investing my money in the stock market. Mutual funds don't suddenly need $50K for a new roof or call you at 3 a.m. to tell you the toilet is packed up. At this point, I'm struggling to get by each month.
This is probably one of the biggest arguments for why people say like the hassle factor with real estate is just not worth it.
Yeah.
Like this person said, like you invest all your money in the stock market. Like there's no hassle. If you need access to those funds, you can sell off a portion as you need to. And yeah, there's going to be tax implications. Yeah, the market might be down, whatever it is, you can still access that money. If you have that money tied up in real estate, to get that money out, you're going to have to do, assuming you have equity in there, then maybe you could do a HELOC, but like that's, now you're just borrowing against the house, right? Like your money's pretty tied up there. I feel like this is probably one of the best examples I've seen for why, what makes investing in the stock market like heavily as your primary source of wealth building, what makes that so attractive?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're just like, I don't know why it's been like so broadly out there, like that just rental real estate is the way to go to make passive income, because this is like not passive at all. Even if you're having a property manager, like there's still a lot of things that, those are your properties, right? I feel like in this day and age, like it's just like, so, all these different classes you can take that, to get into rental real estate. But I think the people that get into it, like, often don't even have their regular finances under control, and then they're getting these huge assets, and then they're just like leveraging them, and it's like, I don't know. I just feel like they're just not financially stable enough to have something like that. They don't even have like an emergency fund, and then we're having rental real estate. It makes no sense. So I don't know. I think in this situation, like, for me, if I was in this situation, I'd probably just like cut my losses and sell these properties, because if this, and see what you get out of it. Like, especially in today's market, you might actually be up. But like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. This is why personally, I don't want rental real estate, because I'm not dealing with stuff like this. It's not super passive. And I've heard this, Nick, I've heard this from so many people that do have properties that they're renting out. Either they have a bad tenant, they have to like evict, or the tenant isn't leaving. So now they have to pay rent on, for this mortgage that they have, because the person isn't, so many issues can come up here.
Yeah, and I think you said it too. Like, so many people get into this because of the promises that they hear, that it's like the passive income generator, but they don't have their personal finances put together. What makes you think like investing in this massive, this massive asset is going to suddenly make your finances better? Like, my wife and I have talked about it a lot. Like, we want to own rental real estate, and that's kind of the intention with what we were looking for in our first home, was like, we want to eventually turn it into a rental.
Yeah. That
meant finding a good deal and all the things associated with that. Our big thing though is like, all right, when we eventually turn that into a rental, obviously our personal finances are going to be in order, but that unit itself, you got to treat it as a business.
Yeah.
And every business needs its own emergency fund to handle things like this, so that you can weather if a tenant needs to be evicted and now you're out 6 months without collecting rent, or if you need to get a new roof. Now, obviously $50,000 just keeping off to the side, that's a lot of money, but you need to have room to at least weather some of this, because otherwise you end up in situations like this where 2 rental properties, both of them now are at a point where they're costing this person more money. Like, at this point, I think you said it, like, I would look into selling these and see, can I get out of this? This doesn't seem like it's the game for this person to play. Like, this seems like it's too much hassle for what this person can handle.
Yeah. And even if they do take like a little bit of a loss or something from these, like, I'm probably just selling them anyway, because it's the loss is worth it. It's your stupid tax that you're paying, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to deal with this anymore. Then you can take your extra money, and start putting it in the stock market and do what you wanted to do all along. Don't hang on to things just because you've already bought them and you feel like you're stuck in them. You can, if you want, wait till your tenant's lease is up and then sell them after that and just be done with it. Like, you don't feel like you need to hold on to something. I've heard that a lot too. Like, people in this situation, and then they're just like, what do we do with this rental property? And it's like, just sell it. It's going to sell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. It's not for you. And that's totally fine. You figured it out. You went through the process of being a landlord, and you realize it's not for you. So just cut your losses and get out of this.
Yeah, and I feel like people might disagree with like, oh, we'll sell it even if it's at a loss, right? But I feel like you can kind of run a cost analysis and figure out like, all right, how many months have you gone without making a profit on at least one of these, right? This person already said that they're coming in at a loss every single month. How many more months are you going to like be at a loss, and what is that going to equal to on a yearly basis? Maybe every year you're burning $5,000-$10,000 just at a loss on this property. And then now with the next property, that person's going to be evicted. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of add up those costs and see like, all right, at a certain point, it would have been more worth it for me to just sell it for a $15,000-$20,000 loss than accumulating those losses over time, and then potentially even more if I make this decision later on in life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Nick, I think it takes a special person to be a landlord. I think you'd be a good landlord because you know how to fix things. You're getting that house all put together, so you know where everything is. You know how to fix it. And you have your finances together. So I think that's like a few of the most important things that you could possibly ever want for a rental, Yeah.
I feel like I'm just organized.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, like when I'm not organized, I get stressed out.
Yeah.
And like that, the flip side of that is like, I'm super particular about how I do things in all areas of my life. People who know me know that, like that I'm very particular about things, but like, that's the only way I can stay like not stressed out when it comes to things like managing my finances or keeping track of whatever it is, right? It's just being very organized. And I feel like you said, it takes someone to be very organized, to be very on top of it, probably to have a few extra skills or at least know people who have these other skills to really take advantage of this scenario. But yeah, this person, they got to just cut their losses now before they lose even more money.
Yep.
All right, taking a quick break from today's episode, Lauren and I have some exciting news we'd like to share with you. If you're feeling stuck with your finances and don't know where to start, we have you covered with our one-on-one financial coaching.
These are no strings attached coaching sessions that you can sign up for today. No ongoing commitment. You simply book a session whenever you need one.
Each call is 90 minutes, and by the end of it, you'll have a clear budget to work with and a solid plan to start paying off your debt. Plus, we'll make sure you walk away with some awesome tools to keep you on track, including our budget dashboard and expense tracker, as well as our debt payoff optimizer.
And the best part, you'll get to work with both of us on the call. Together, we'll help you develop the best possible strategy forward, answer your questions, and make sure you feel confident about managing your money.
So if you're ready to get a handle on your budget and kickstart your financial journey forward, check out the link in the show notes to book your first session.
We can't wait to get started with you. Now, back to the episode.
Cool. Why don't we move on into the next one then? So this person, this is a shitty situation. This person wrote, I spent $23,000 on chemotherapy for my cat, only for him to die anyway. My savings are drained, my credit cards are maxed out, and I have no clue how to get myself out of this mess. Between my debt payments, my rent, and my other bills, I'm barely able to make a dent on my debt. The worst part is I feel like I was finally getting ahead before all of this happened.
Ugh. As a dog mom, I totally understand this, like wanting to do what's best for your pet. $23,000 on chemotherapy for my cat. I mean, that is a lot. Personally, I mean, I guess it would have to depend on the situation and all of that, but I don't know if I want to put my animal through chemotherapy. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Yeah. And I guess it depends on, how old they are and everything, but pets don't live forever. I would say cats, like 15 years maybe, but dogs are probably less than that depending on the breed, but it's like, it depends on how old they are. Like if you're, I mean, it depends at any age, I guess. Like, do you want to put them through chemotherapy? Like, I just don't know if it's worth it. But I think the biggest thing is for me and what I do with my pets, I actually have like a little sinking fund for them for these vet type visits or whatever comes up. Now, obviously, $23,000 for chemotherapy is not going to be included in that, right? But like anything that might pop up, at a normal vet visit. I've never had like a major surgery or anything. I've had my one dog had to go to the emergency vet, but this is like next level.
Yeah, I don't think anyone likes to pay for like insurance of any kind. Yeah. And then when you talk about pet insurance, I feel like most people are kind of like, that's a little ridiculous, to have pet insurance. Unless you're this person who had to pay $23,000, like that's crazy. But yeah, I don't know. When my wife and I, like when our last dog, before he passed away, I remember he was getting kind of, things were on the rocks a little bit, and I remember we had a conversation where it was like, hey, what's our limit? Yeah. And it's a hard conversation to have because you're attaching money to the life of something that you love, but it's like, it's a conversation that you need to have where it's like, hey, like we're going to take our dog into the vet. What's our limit to where if they say, hey, they need, X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost you, $5,000, like, is that above or below our limit? And we had set a threshold for ourselves, like, all right, if something that our dog needs is more than like $1,500 for a single thing, like, I don't know that we're going to do it. Yeah. He was already old. He was an older dog. He had lived, we felt like we gave him a great life and it just, for us, that was our limit. And we were trying to save to buy a home. We knew like all these other things were kind of at play. And that's, for some people they might think, oh, that's kind of heartless. You could have spent $3,000 or whatever it is. Right. But I think you got to have that conversation, especially if you don't have pet insurance. Yeah. Now knowing like what we went through with like the emergency vet, the x-rays, all this random stuff. And it turned out that the vet was completely wrong on what it was anyway. After going through all that, I'm like, okay, we definitely need to get pet insurance if we get like a younger dog. Yeah. If we adopt an older dog, it's like, all right, as long as you give him a good life, I think you kind of did your job there. Yeah. But pet insurance, for how cheap it is, I feel like it's so worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess look into what it covers too, because I think probably all policies are different. I've never had pet insurance just because most of my dogs that I've adopted have been like older and it just wouldn't make sense for that. But I think another thing to realize is that veterinarians and like they run businesses, you have to know that not all are created equal. For example, like I've loved every vet that we've ever had. I had the one I had in Pittsburgh was amazing. The one I have here is really awesome. And what I like about them is that when something's wrong, they start with like the lowest tier option. Like, hey, let's start here. and see if that fixes it, rather than, I know some vets would be like, let's do blood work, let's do an ultrasound, let's do this, let's do that. And then your bill is like $2,000 and you're like, wait a second, I don't even know what the issue is. So that's something to keep in mind too. I know when issues already come up and you're at these places and it's riding your bill's already high, you're not going to go get another second opinion because then you have another bill. You know what I mean? But just vetting your vet to make sure that they're not a place that's always just like, let's do the most of the most to make sure that this is something isn't wrong. I've always had a vet that just like starts at the bottom and says, hey, what do you feel comfortable with? You know what I mean? I've been blessed like that. So this wouldn't be an issue for me. But I've always said too, like, I have a 13-year-old dog right now. I'm not going to do anything crazy with her. She's living her best life. She's snoring right beside me right now. Like I'm going to let her live her life out. She's happy. She's healthy. We go to the vet every so often if something goes wrong. They say she's fine. So it's like, I'm not going to do these crazy things for my dog. Like I said, I think there's situations where you can, but I don't know. You have to determine if it's in the best interest of your pet, honestly.
I have always been skeptical of vets and dentists because
100%.
They run businesses, and it's a business. At the end of the day, they're in the service industry. They care for people. But it's a business. And to me, I'm always like, do I really need that thing with my dentist? Because my teeth don't hurt. They're like, well, yeah, but 5 years it might hurt. I'm like, we'll see where it's at in 5 years then. Yeah. But I always go with the cheapest option, especially at the dentist, anyway, those are two areas where for sure. But for this person, I'm like, $23,000, like, I imagine when you pay for this, it wasn't like, hey, here's the $23,000 bill, go and pay it. Yeah. I imagine it was accumulated $23,000 over the course of however long this chemotherapy went on, plus the initial assessments of all of this. Like, at what point were they like, all right, my savings is gone. Let me keep doing this. All right, one credit card's maxed out. All right, let me throw it on another credit. Like at a certain point, like this person just, and I get it, you can love your animal so much, but like, at a certain point, you gotta understand, like, I am not making good financial decisions, and all of this is being run through my emotions. You know, like, I don't know. It seems like there were so many opportunities for this person to realize, hey, like, enough is enough. And you can say enough is enough with a lot of love too, and that is just wild. And that's why, like, now, me and my wife, when it comes to like a lot of different things, we always have our limit. Now it's always like a number that we've discussed where it's like, hey, like, this is the most we're willing to spend, and even if we really, really want to pursue whatever that thing is, if it goes above this limit, like, it's just a no. Even if it's just barely, it's just a no. And I feel like you got to be able to have a conversation like that about a situation like this. Yeah.
And again, this is super emotional. You're trying to do the right thing. You want to do what's best for your pet. But sometimes I feel like when you're keeping your pet alive like this, it's more for you than it is for like them, especially when you're putting them through chemotherapy. Yeah. I'm just not doing that. And and I know that, we'll get pushback on that or whatever, but I'm like the biggest dog lover there is. I volunteer at my local rescue. I, rescue animals, and like, I'm a big dog person, and it's like, I still am not going to do crazy things, to keep them alive. Now, let's say a dog broke their leg and they're like 5 years old. Of course, we're going to take care of that. Yeah. But if they're an old dog, like if Maggie somehow, she's 13, if they would say, hey, she has cancer, do you want to do this X, Y, Z? No. I'm just going to let her live the rest of her life. It's not going to make her lifespan any longer, doesn't change anything on that front. But yeah, at the end of the day, set your limits, put some money aside, or get pet insurance. Make sure you know what it covers, and approach your vet bills that way. But pets also have issues, so you need to have some money set aside for it. I say that all the time. And I feel like it's only getting more expensive these days. $23,000 on a cat? That's crazy.
Crazy. This would definitely get pushed back. I could see someone spending $23,000 on a dog they really love. For me, a cat, I'm like, come on. That's wild. Nick. That sounds crazy to say out loud. I know. Yeah. I know. Where this person can go from here, though, I mean, honestly, if they found themselves in a place where they spent emotionally, like, to an extreme, where are the other areas in your life where you have the potential to do that? And, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning, you got to just show up. You got to bring full awareness of the whole situation. Figure out, like, where are you going wrong in the other parts of your finances as well. This person, said they drained their savings. Obviously, they did have a savings, so maybe they were good with their finances before this. But, I feel like from here, like, definitely don't get another animal until you get yourself back on stable feet. Then, like you said, look at pet insurance. From here, though, like, get those credit cards organized from smallest to largest, start paying them off, and then start building that savings again. I think that's the best thing that they can do. Not only to just like emotionally recover from this, but also obviously to financially recover from it as well.
Yeah. And like let go of the shame. Like, yeah, it sucks that you did that. And then your cat also passed away. So it's just shitty all around. But like, don't hold on to it. Just move forward with it. And you know what you'll do in the future because you've already done this, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump into the last one here. So this one says, will I ever be able to retire? I just turned 40 and feel like I'm waking up for the first time in as long as I can remember. I've spent most of my adult life just coasting through the years, spending everything I bring in, not having any sense of direction, and barely building any savings along the way. Most of the people I work with are married, own their own home, and have actually put their money towards building a future. I, on the other hand, have barely made any progress and feel like it's too late to even build a reasonable retirement fund. How do I even get started?
That comparison game, like you're always going to lose when you play that with yourself. But I've heard this so many times where people at 30, at 40, at 50, at 60 even, they're like, I feel like I'm now just finally waking up, coasting through life, whatever comes in is the same amount that goes out on a monthly basis. Kind of like just like no real purpose behind how they're moving through life, and it's easy because it's easy to get stuck in a place like that. And I was talking about this with a friend recently where it was like, I forget what it's called. It's like this paradox where like if you were further away from something or if it was harder to get there, you'd almost be better off than if you were closer to that thing. Because if you're closer, you can kind of get to where you're trying to go comfortably. You might take your time getting there. But if you're further, it really kind of lights a fire under you and says, hey, I got to start moving if I want to get there. And you kind of get stuck in that place where this person might be stuck in where it's like, they were able to just coast through life because things were comfortable enough.
Yeah.
There was no consequences of not building your savings, of spending everything that you're bringing in on a monthly basis until now, where they realize, shit, I have 20 years left. Maybe I wanted to retire early. That's out of the question now. Like now they get to a point where like this person said, they're finally waking up and realizing, shit, what have I done for the last 20 plus years? Right.
And I also feel like, now's a great time to wake up. At least you're not waking up when you're 60 years old and asking these questions. 40 is great. That's still pretty young. And I also think, like you said, stop playing the comparison game because you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. As we've showed, on this podcast many times, like the different stories of financial situations that people are in. I don't think you can really necessarily know what's going on, in their households. But just to run like a quick calculation, because I love doing this, Nick. 40 years old. Let's say you have $0 in investments. Okay. Let's say this person from 40 until 67 puts $500 a month away in retirement at an 8% annual return, which is very conservative, in 27 years. So by the time they retire at 67, whatever, they could have $570,000. So $500,000, like that sounds pretty good, having that compared to where they're at right now, where they feel like, can they even retire? Like, that's amazing. Having that pot of money plus whatever you're getting with Social Security, like you're definitely going to have something there and it's better than nothing. So it's great that you're, starting today.
100%. And my favorite thing to tell people is like, retirement just might look different than what you imagined.
Yeah.
If you are coming late to the game, I think you got to be okay. You either got to be okay with the fact that it's going to look different, or you got to be willing to go to the extremes to make it look exactly like how you want it to.
Yeah.
There's kind of no middle ground there, and I think for most people, it's going to be accepting that, hey, this idea of what I thought retirement was going to look like might just not be possible anymore. So how can I make it as great as I can? And like you said, this person could still retire with $500,000, and combine that with maybe a more favorable living situation, or combine that with getting Social Security if that's, hopefully still around in 27 years, right? Like then we're kind of talking about a situation that's totally manageable, totally doable, but if you really got to start moving today. And that's true for whatever age you realize this at, but like once you notice that there is an issue, you got to start making progress. And that's something that I've always like kind of lost compassion for is when people realize there's an issue and they let that issue continue on because they're like, oh, it's an issue, I just don't want to change it yet. At that point, you lose my sympathy, because if you realize that it's an issue, at least start figuring out like what, start expanding on what the problem is, start understanding the problem, even if that's your first step to finding a solution to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not sure if we get this from the question or not, but does this person seem like single to you, Nick? Because I feel like there was no mention of any sort of like person to do this with. And I also feel like that's why, oh yeah, because it says most of the people I work with are married, own their own home, have money towards building a future. So it kind of seems like, this person's like on their own, have just been spending their money, and now they're like, oh, like maybe I want those things too. So it's not too late for all of this stuff. But like you said, like it's going to look a little different because you are starting later. However, like I just did the calculations on, you can definitely still retire with quite a bit of amount of money. $500,000 is not a joke. You know what I mean? You're not going to be on yachts or anything, but it's still a really good amount of money to have. But now that you've realized this, it is time to get started here. So how are you going to change this? It seems like, the first step that this person, has come to the conclusion themselves that they have to do some changes. So what's that going to look like? Probably managing their money a little bit better, because they said they have been, just coasting through life, spending everything they make. So that's probably the first place, like we talked about earlier, managing their money better, getting on a budget, probably the first time in their entire life they've ever been on a budget. And that might be hard for someone who's 40 years old and has never been on a budget. That's probably the place you need to start first. And then start walking the steps to the next, paying off the debts that you have, start saving for retirement. Because if you can put $500 a month away, you're going to have $500,000 at, whenever you get there. So I think that, as long as this person gets going now, there's definitely some time for them to save up enough to retire. But you can't just start thinking this and then not change anything, which is what a lot of people do in this situation.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point. Like, if this person is single, like their potential to build wealth, like if you compare someone who's single versus a married couple, like their potential to build wealth is so much greater, because now you have two people attacking this issue, right? Yeah. And maybe the dynamic of who's working, who's not working changes over the years. But even if you got that head start for 5 or 10 years, like that's a huge piece of the puzzle, because like if you're starting at $500 a month, maybe a lot of money to you. Maybe you can afford to put more, but like if you had two people putting $500 a month now you were talking about $1 million, like this starts to compound so much greater when there's two people who are working it. And I feel like not enough people, like there's a saying, like the person you choose to spend your life with is one of the biggest financial decisions you can make, because they can either help you, and I don't mean this in such a way that's like only about transactions, but like they can either help you get rich, or they can be a huge drain of your resources, more than just financial resources too, like emotional and mental energy and all that stuff, time as well. But like if you two can start to build a life together, like now your wealth building potential just skyrockets from there. But yeah, based on how the person worded it, yeah, they're probably not married, don't own a home, and just don't feel like they have a path towards success.
Yeah. So, if we follow the plan that we always talk about, obviously we're going to save up. This person, I don't know. Oh, so they barely have any savings, so I'm guessing they don't, but they're going to save up at least 1 month of expenses and then start paying off their high interest debt. So if they've got credit cards or any type of high interest personal loans or anything like that, get those paid off. And then I want to see some retirement savings in here as well, because this person doesn't have a ton of time to do that. So if they have like a car payment or student loans or something that they're working on paying off as well, that can probably be done in tandem with their retirement investing. Yeah. But they said they've been spending everything along the way, kind of mindlessly, just coasting through life. So I think they probably do have a little bit of flexibility with their money here, but they just need to use it very strategically at this point moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think people, like you said, this person needs to get on a budget. I don't feel like people give enough credit to, like, if you're in a situation like this, how powerful a budget can be. And yes. I'm always a big believer that like a budget's a huge part of any financial plan, but especially when you feel like you're just waking up, or you feel like now is the time I have to get things together. You can kind of see in the way that people describe their situation. It's like, yeah, a budget's going to go, like if you stick to it, if you learn how to budget, you stick to it really well, like that's going to be life-changing for you in the way that you feel about your finances, the way that you manage it, your level of stress when it comes to just thinking about money, like getting on a really solid budget and learning how to use it well. Like that's going to completely transform this person's life or anyone else who's kind of feeling like they're in a similar situation. All right, that wraps up today's episode. And, if you're feeling like these people where your finances just feel destroyed, you feel like there's no way out of it, like for most people, I would say it's not too late. You just got to get started. You just got to be willing to take that first step of actually just showing up, whether that's getting awareness, putting together a budget, making a plan, whatever it is, like you just got to show up. But, as always, if you found any value out of today's episode, the best way you can help us grow is by sharing this with a friend and considering to subscribe.
Yeah. And if you want to have your question answered on the show, just visit our website, justanothermoneypodcast.com, and click the submit a question button. And don't forget to join us for another episode of Just Another Money Podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.